Welcome everybody, my name is Michael Platzer and I present our short paper, a real-time application with fully predictable task timing. Determining the worst-case execution time of real-time control systems is important to guarantee the stability of the system, but it is surprisingly hard in practice. Single-path code makes timing analysis trivial by reducing the program to a single execution path. Single-path code has never been tested on a real-world application, and we investigate its practicability. Real-time control systems usually have stringent requirements on their response time. If the controller does not react to changes in the system state quickly, the stability of the system might be compromised with potentially catastrophic consequences. Therefore, it is essential to determine the worst-case execution time of the control algorithm. However, determining the worst-case execution time of a program is a complex task in practice. It can be done using static analysis, where a timing model of the execution platform is used to calculate the duration of execution paths in the program. While the timing analysis tools allow to get a loose bound relatively quickly, a lot of manual annotations is required to capture flow facts that are needed for tight bounds. An alternative to static analysis are measurement-based approaches. These are hybrid approaches combining measurements with static timing analysis. For these approaches, it is important to have sufficient test coverage by measuring a lot of execution paths in order to get reliable bounds. Single-path code is a code generation paradigm which makes timing analysis trivial by generating programs with a single execution path. That way, static analysis needs to calculate the duration of one path only. On time-predictable hardware, the execution time of single-path code is constant with respect to input values. Therefore, a single measurement is enough to determine that execution time. Single-path code uses predicated execution instead of conditional control flow branches. While in regular code only one branch of a conditional statement is executed, single-path code executes all branches sequentially, but discards the results of all but one branch. Loops in single-path code are executed for a constant number of iterations, depending on the loop bound. Single-path code requires that the execution platform supports predicated execution. We use the time-predictable processor Patmos, which was developed as part of the TCREST project, which supports fully predicated execution, and the compiler developed especially for it has the option to generate single-path code for Patmos. The goal of our work is to demonstrate the practicability of single-path code in real-time control systems. We therefore conducted a case study applying the single-path paradigm to the control algorithms of a quadcopter. A quadcopter is a helicopter that is lifted by 4 rotors. It is inherently unstable and requires active control to maintain leveled flight. We implemented the state estimation and control algorithms for a quadcopter and compiled it to single-path code. The state estimation algorithm uses data from an inertial measurement unit to estimate the attitude of the quadcopter. The control algorithm then uses that estimate to calculate the required control action to keep the quadcopter stable. The system consists of 3 major components. The inertial measurement unit with a 3-axis accelerometer and gyroscope measures the acceleration and rotation rates and feeds these data to the processor core. The Patmos processor core is synthesized as a soft core on an FPGA and executes the state estimation and control algorithms whenever a new IMU measurement is available. The desired rotor speeds calculated by the control algorithm are then fed to the motor controllers, which in turn regulate the rotor speeds. The inertial measurement unit sends measurement updates regularly with a constant period t, triggering the execution of the state estimation and control algorithms. Since the execution time of single-path code on Patmos is constant, the delay between an IMU update and the application of the new rotor speeds is also constant. Therefore, the response time of our system is constant, and the rotor speed updates also have the same constant period t as the IMU updates. We verify the feasibility of using the single-path paradigm for real-time control systems by deploying our single-path state estimation and control algorithm on a real-world quadcopter. In our experiments, we observed that the controller is effectively able to stabilize the quadcopter. The controller only regulates the attitude, but not sideways motion, which is why the quadcopter is secured with tetris. We measured the execution time of our single-path code to be 63.3 microseconds for the state estimation and 139.2 microseconds for the control algorithm. Therefore, the response time of our system is about 200 microseconds. Finally, we compared the execution time of our single-path controller with variants using regular machine code. First, with regular code running on Patmos, and then with regular code running on two other processors. An Atmel microcontroller running at 16 MHz and a superscalar ARM Cortex A53 processor running at 1.4 GHz. The ARM processor is running Linux as an operating system, but we discarded all executions that were interrupted by the operating system, so that we only have those samples where the execution time is as if the program was running on a bare metal system. This graph shows a box plot, where the regions with most samples are shown with boxes extending from the lower to the upper quartile. Diamond symbols are used to represent outliers. In the first row, we see the execution time of several measurements on the Patmos when using regular code. Since Patmos is already a time-predictable processor, there is not much variability in the execution time, and therefore the box is reduced to a vertical line. There are still some outliers because not all executions have exactly the same execution time, but there are very few of them and they are very close to the average execution time. The second row shows the execution time of these two algorithms when using single-path code on Patmos. Single-path code has a constant execution time, so there is only a vertical line because all samples have exactly the same execution time. The third row shows the execution time measurements on the superscalar ARM processor. Now here we observe that there is much more execution time variability. While the execution time is much lower on average, we observe that there are some samples that take much longer on the ARM. We observe executions which take an order of magnitude longer than the average, and even get close or even longer than the single-path code on Patmos. The Atmel microprocessor is not shown in this graph because the executions on this platform take much longer, about 10 times longer than on the Patmos. They also have a low variability since the Atmel is also a time-predictable processor. So in summary, we have shown that the single-path paradigm can successfully be applied to real-time control systems, where it guarantees constant response times and, as we have seen in our experiments, the worst-case execution time of single-path code on the soft-core Patmos processor is close to the observed worst-case execution time of an ARM processor, which is supposed to be much more powerful. Thank you very much for your attention, and I am glad to answer your questions in the chat.